Joe Rogan exposes the truth about Erika Kirk and Charlie's parents. The internet didn't just flinch, it convulsed. One clipped moment. One unfinished sentence. One pause from Joe Rogan that felt heavier than a full confession. Within minutes, timelines were on fire, group chats went silent, and fans swore they'd just witnessed the beginning of the biggest celebrity unraveling nobody saw coming. Joe Rogan didn't shout. He didn't accuse. He didn't even explain. And somehow, that made it worse. Because when the most influential podcaster on the planet hesitates mid-thought while mentioning Erika Kirk and Charlie's parents, the internet doesn't wait for context. It writes its own ending. Screenshots spread like wildfire. TikTok slowed the audio down frame by frame. Reddit detectives built timelines overnight. Twitter decided something had been exposed even though no one could agree on what. Was Rogan hinting at family tension? A buried conflict? A truth that had been carefully kept out of the spotlight? Nobody knew, but everyone felt it. Old photos resurfaced. Silence was rebranded as strategy. Grief was reinterpreted as control. And suddenly, a private family dynamic became a public obsession fueled by speculation, emotion, and a hunger for answers. Fans weren't asking if there was more anymore. They were asking who knew, who benefited, and why now. And the most chilling part. Joe Rogan never followed up. No clarification. No denial. No second episode to calm the storm. Just absence. And on the internet, absence is never empty, it's an invitation. Because once a narrative like this takes hold, it doesn't need proof to grow. It only needs attention. And what happened next turned a single moment into a full-blown digital reckoning that no one could stop watching. The moment Joe Rogan's words hit the airwaves, everything that had once been whispered behind closed doors came screaming into the light. It didn't start as a rant. It didn't sound like an expose. It sounded like hesitation. Rogan leaned back, paused longer than usual, and said something that sent shockwaves through millions of listeners. There's a whole layer to Erika Kirk and Charlie's parents that people don't see, and it's not pretty. That was it. No names dragged. No accusations spelled out. But in that silence, the internet heard everything. Within hours, clips were chopped, slowed, enhanced, and replayed like evidence in a trial that hadn't even begun yet. Fans noticed Rogan's tone wasn't playful. It wasn't speculative. It was careful. And careful, to the internet, meant dangerous. Almost immediately, old footage of Charlie's parents began resurfacing. Early interviews. Smiling faces. Moments where they stood proudly beside their son, before the spotlight swallowed him whole. Then came the contrast. Their sudden absence in later years. Their silence after his death. Their near erasure from public conversations about his legacy. People started asking questions that had never been asked out loud before. Why was Erika always the one speaking? Why did she become the sole voice of remembrance? Why did Charlie's parents fade into the background, as if they'd never existed? The questions weren't accusations yet, but they were sharp enough to draw blood. Insiders, anonymous, unverified, but disturbingly specific, began dropping context in comment sections and burner accounts. One claimed there had been tension long before Charlie passed. Another said family meetings ended in shouting matches that never made headlines. Someone else swore there were arguments over money, over access, over who controlled Charlie's image once he was no longer here to speak for himself. Screenshots with no clear origin circulated anyway, showing tense messages allegedly arguing about boundaries and decision-making. No proof. No confirmation. But the internet doesn't wait for either. Then came the funeral whispers. Fans went back and re-watched clips frame by frame. Who was standing where? Who hugged whom? Who looked stiff? Who didn't speak? People claimed they saw discomfort in Erika's posture when Charlie's parents were mentioned. Others insisted his parents looked distant, restrained, almost rehearsed. Body language experts on TikTok broke it all down with dramatic music underneath, declaring there was unresolved conflict written all over their faces. Whether true or not didn't matter. The narrative had begun to write itself. As the speculation snowballed, Rogan's name kept coming back into the conversation like a ghost that refused to leave. Why would he say that? Why hint at something so explosive if there was nothing behind it? Fans dissected his past behavior, pointing out that Rogan rarely tiptoes unless his protecting sources. That detail alone ignited another wave of panic. If Rogan was holding back, then what was he holding back from? And who asked him to stay quiet? That's when the so-called insider leaks escalated. A now-deleted Reddit post claimed Charlie's parents had tried to intervene after his death and were politely but firmly shut out. Another alleged there were disagreements about memorials, foundations, even which photos could be shared publicly. Someone else suggested legal conversations took place behind the scenes, not lawsuits, but warnings. The kind of conversations that leave families fractured without ever stepping into a courtroom. Again, nothing confirmed. But every rumor added another brick to the wall separating Erika from Charlie's parents in the public imagination. Social media chaos hit full throttle. Twitter split into camps overnight. One side defended Erika fiercely, calling the speculation cruel, invasive, and disrespectful to a grieving widow. The other side demanded transparency, arguing that silence only made things look worse. TikTok creators made hour-long lives piecing together timelines that may or may not exist. YouTube thumbnails screamed, "What are they hiding?" even when the videos themselves admitted there were no concrete answers. The drama fed itself, growing louder by the hour. Celebrity reactions poured gasoline on the fire. A well-known podcaster tweeted vaguely about families fighting over legacies when the cameras turn off. A conservative influencer posted a cryptic Bible verse about truth coming to light. Fans immediately assumed both were indirect shots. Even silence became suspicious. When Erika didn't respond, people called it calculated. When Charlie's parents didn't speak, people called it proof they were being silenced. There was no neutral ground left. Behind the scenes, according to whispers that spread like wildfire, there were documents. Emails. Voice notes. Not released, not verified, but constantly referenced. If those ever come out, one anonymous account warned, people will see everything differently. That sentence alone went viral, shared tens of thousands of times without a single receipt attached. The power of suggestion did the rest. And just when it seemed like the story might burn itself out, Joe Rogan made it worse by doing absolutely nothing. No clarification. No denial. No follow-up. He let the silence stretch, and in that silence, the speculation grew teeth. Fans convinced themselves this wasn't just gossip anymore. This was the calm before a storm. Something was coming. Someone was preparing to speak. Someone else was desperately hoping they wouldn't. By the end of that week, one truth became unavoidable. Whatever the reality was behind Erika Kirk and Charlie's parents, the internet had already decided it was explosive. The tension wasn't fading. It was tightening. And as whispers turned into expectations, one terrifying question hovered over everything. What happens if someone finally breaks their silence and tells a version of the story that no one is ready to hear? What pushed this from reckless speculation into full-blown obsession was the moment the internet convinced itself that something was actively being held back. Not forgotten. Not misunderstood. Withheld. A single anonymous post lit the fuse. It claimed Charlie's parents had tried to speak privately after his death, and were met with what was described as firm resistance. No threats. No shouting. Just walls. Doors that no longer opened. Phone calls that stopped being returned. Meetings that never happened. The post never named names. It didn't have proof. But it described the silence with unsettling detail, and that was enough. Because suddenly, the narrative wasn't about grief anymore. It was about control. People began combing through timelines with surgical precision. Screenshots of Erika's public statements were stacked next to the absence of statements from Charlie's parents. Fans asked why every foundation update, every memorial message, every public remembrance came from one voice. They asked why the parents who raised him were no longer part of the story being told. And once that question landed, it refused to leave. Comment sections filled with the same accusation, phrased 100 different ways. Who decides who gets to speak when someone dies famous? Then came the alleged messages. Blurry. Cropped. Unverifiable. But devastating in tone. One screenshot that went viral claimed to show a conversation where someone warned, "This needs to stay unified. Too many voices will confuse people." Another allegedly read, "We can't afford public disagreement right now." The internet latched onto those lines like proof of a conspiracy, even though no one could confirm who sent them, when they were sent, or if they were real at all. It didn't matter. They fit the story people were already telling themselves. TikTok turned the situation into a courtroom drama. Creators played prosecutors and defenders, pointing to pauses in interviews, to body language, to who unfollowed whom. A slowed-down clip of Erika at a public event went viral because someone claimed she tensed up when Charlie's parents' names were mentioned. Another creator swore they saw his mother hesitate before hugging her. Millions watched. Millions believed. The algorithm rewarded outrage, not accuracy. Then the celebrity reactions started getting louder. A media personality tweeted, "Families fall apart when money and legacy collide." A podcaster said, "I've seen this story before, and it never ends well." Neither mentioned names, but fans tagged Erika and Charlie's parents anyway. Even neutral commentary was treated as confirmation. Silence was no longer neutral. Silence was suspicious. Behind the scenes, rumors multiplied. Some claimed Charlie's parents had disagreements over how his image was being used. Others whispered about foundations, branding, future projects that allegedly excluded them. A few darker corners of the internet went further, suggesting legal pressure, not lawsuits, but warnings. The kind that don't show up in court records, but are enough to scare people into compliance. Again, nothing verified. But repeated enough times, it began to feel real to those watching. Joe Rogan's name kept hovering like a shadow over all of it. Fans re-watched the clip obsessively, convinced they missed something. Why did he sound so serious? Why didn't he laugh it off? Why didn't he clarify afterward? A theory took hold that Rogan had been asked to tread lightly, that he knew more but chose to hint instead of expose. Whether that was true or not, the belief itself became fuel. If Rogan was careful, then maybe there really was something dangerous beneath the surface. The pressure reached a breaking point when a supposed family friend account appeared and claimed Charlie's parents had documentation, not to destroy anyone, but to protect themselves. The post ended with a chilling line, "They stayed quiet to keep the peace, but peace doesn't mean truth." That sentence spread faster than anything else. Screenshots of it appeared on every platform within hours. Fans begged for receipts. Others warned that forcing grieving parents into the spotlight was cruel. The divide grew vicious. Erika still said nothing. No denial. No clarification. No emotional statement asking for privacy. Just carefully curated posts that some saw as dignified and others saw as defiant. Charlie's parents remained silent too, which only deepened the paranoia. People convinced themselves there had to be a reason both sides weren't talking. And when neither side fills the void, the internet does it for them. By now, the story had evolved beyond facts. It was a psychological thriller written in real time. Every new rumor felt like a puzzle piece. Every pause felt intentional. And the most dangerous belief had fully taken root, that someone, somewhere, was waiting for the right moment to speak. Not to hint. Not to imply. But to finally tell a version of events that would shatter everything people thought they understood. And just when the noise reached its loudest point, when it seemed impossible for the tension to climb any higher, one final whisper began circulating, that a conversation had been recorded long ago. A private one. A conversation that, if ever released, wouldn't just confirm conflict, it would redefine who the public believes the villains and victims really are. By the time the rumor about the recording spread, the internet was no longer reacting, it was waiting. Waiting in that dangerous, breath-held silence that only happens when people believe the truth is about to drop and someone, somewhere, is deciding whether to pull the trigger. The alleged recording wasn't described as explosive in volume. It was described as devastating in tone. Calm voices. Controlled words. The kind of conversation that doesn't sound dramatic until you realize what's being said between the lines. And that's what terrified people the most. According to whispers, the recording captured a moment shortly after Charlie's death, when grief was still raw and nothing had settled. A moment when decisions were being made fast, before emotions could catch up. The rumor claimed it wasn't an argument. It was a negotiation. And negotiations imply leverage. That single implication detonated everything. Because if there was leverage, it meant someone had something to lose. The alleged content of the conversation leaked in fragments, never whole, always just enough to spark panic. Phrases like, "This needs to stay contained," and "the public doesn't need multiple versions," started circulating without context. Fans argued over who would even say something like that. Some insisted it sounded like crisis management, not manipulation. Others swore it was proof of silencing. No one knew. Everyone chose a side anyway. Then came the moment that turned speculation into frenzy. A well-known journalist tweeted and deleted a single sentence within minutes. "There's more documentation than people realize." Screenshots survived. The deletion made it worse. People assumed pressure. They assumed legal warnings. They assumed power moving quietly behind the scenes. The story metastasized overnight. Suddenly, old interviews were being reinterpreted as foreshadowing. Fans replayed moments where Charlie talked about family, about trust, about legacy, asking if he was hinting at internal conflict all along. One clip went viral where he said, "Not everyone agrees on what should happen when I'm gone." At the time, it sounded philosophical. Now, people treated it like a warning. Charlie's parents became symbols rather than people. Every photo of them looking tired, reserved, or distant was turned into evidence of suppression. Meanwhile, Erika's composure was framed as either admirable strength or chilling detachment, depending on who you asked. There was no middle ground anymore. Empathy had been replaced by narrative. The most unsettling development came when a legal analyst on a live stream explained how easily families can be sidelined after a death if documentation favors one party. Trusts, estates, intellectual property. Joe Rogan's earlier comments resurfaced again, but now they sounded less like speculation and more like a warning shot. People realized he never accused anyone directly. He never claimed guilt. He only pointed at the tension and said, "Pay attention." And now everyone was. The tension peaked when another rumor emerged that mediation had taken place behind closed doors. No proof. Just whispers. But whispers that suggested the conflict wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. That agreement may have been reached. Those lines may have been drawn. That the public story might only ever see the version all parties agreed to let survive. And that realization was the real gut punch. Because it meant the truth, whatever it was, might never come out clean. Not in one dramatic reveal. Not in a viral leak. But in fragments. In absences. In what's never said. The story didn't end with a confession or a release. It ended with something far more unsettling. The understanding that someone controls the narrative now, and everyone else is reacting to shadows. The internet keeps waiting for the drop that may never come, while every new silence feels heavier than the last. And as the noise slowly fades into exhausted speculation, one question refuses to go away, haunting every comment section, every reaction video, every late-night thread. If the truth is so dangerous that everyone involved is afraid to say it, what exactly are we not supposed to know? Before you click away, understand this: stories like this don't just fade out. They disappear when people stop paying attention. And if everything you just heard is even half as serious as it sounds, then silence is exactly what allows the real truth to stay buried. This is the moment where you decide whether this story lives or dies. If you felt that tension in your chest while listening, if you found yourself questioning motives, replaying moments, wondering what's missing, that's not by accident. That's because there are still pieces out there, pieces that only surface when enough people are watching closely. Liking this video isn't just support, it's a signal. It tells the algorithm, the internet, and everyone involved that people are not done asking questions. Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Not later. Right now. Who do you believe? Do you think the silence is protection or control? Do you think there's more that will never be released? Or do you believe this is just the calm before another bombshell? Every theory matters, and trust me, people are reading. And if you're not subscribed, this is where you fix that. Because when the next leak hits, when the next statement drops, when someone finally breaks, it won't be everywhere at once. It'll show up where the audience was paying attention first. Turn on notifications. Share this with someone who's been following this saga. Because missing the next chapter won't just mean being late to the conversation. It means watching history get rewritten without you in it.